Okay, I just want to continue to talk about Michael Polanyi. What I want to do in this video is just to extend this idea of the explicit that he writes about. And just as a reminder, in several of his writings, particularly the tacit dimension, he distinguishes between what he calls explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. And I'm just putting these up against the terms that I've already used, objective and subjective, to indicate that there's kind of metaphorical relationships between these, or they form part of a coherent metaphorical schema. And I want to try and expand on that today by talking about specifically the explicit. And I'll be reading this, so I go. Okay. The term explicit, which Polanyi uses within his epistemological system, has a range of applications outside of that usage. In popular culture, it has come to mean sexually provocative, or when applied to rap music, for example, to mean containing uncensored and possibly offensive speech. As far as the origins of the term go, whilst they may appear to lie elsewhere, they do suggest a continuity which embraces these contemporary vernacular uses and Polanyi's application of the word to a form of knowledge. Explicit comes from the Latin explicitus, which translates as to unfold or to roll out, and traces of the plicitus can be found in the modern usage plait, which is like a plait of hair or something like that. The words explicitus est liber could often be found at the end of medieval manuscripts, where today we might find the words the end. The location of this sentence, at the end of a piece of writing, makes literal and appropriate sense when that writing takes the form of a scroll, which is where one would originally find them. In arriving at that point of the writing, the explication, one had literally unrolled the knowledge into the world and hence made it explicit. The examples of modern usage in sexually loaded images or potentially offensive language can be seen to follow that tradition in metaphorical form. The pornographic picture is explicitly provocative because it does not lie dormant on the page, but is felt to unfurl across the space between image and viewer and seems to touch his passions directly. The obscenities and violence found in the lyrics to some music may in this sense be thought of as the unfolding of an arm and the throwing of a punch out at the listener. The explicit knowledge of Polanyi shows a family resemblance to these metaphorical instantiations, and indeed to a raft of other uses, all of which link some work of the intellect to an outgoing occupation of space. Walter Ong includes this term, explicit, amongst those which he saw as relating knowing not only to the occupation of space, but also to vision. He says this: when knowledge is likened to sight, it becomes pretty exclusively a matter of explanation or explication, a laying out on a surface, perhaps in chart-like form, or an unfolding to present maximum exteriority. There is the sense that the knowing which can be described, articulated, proposed and declared has extended itself outward from the person of the speaker, carving a clear path through space such that it stands as an object at the end of that path. The close allegiance of the notion of the explicit is thoroughly exploited in Rebecca Schneider's The Explicit Body in Performance. As part of a series of closely argued propositions about particularly the status and objectification of women in relation to body-based arts practice, she says that habits of perspectival vision have emblematically placed the female body at the vanishing point, even as the primary scene or landscape of representation is feminized. I argue that certain tenets of perspectival vision, particularly the removed invisible viewer, are still very much at play, even in so-called anti-ocular economies of vision. Now, I wouldn't want to unpack that paragraph in its entirety in terms of the various conceptual metaphors of space that it draws upon and which allow it to make a certain kind of sense. What we might note at this point, though, is that the term explicit, the explicit body that she refers to, is clearly being adopted because of its implication of an unfolding across possibly politically contested space. This application of the schema of spatial metaphors and visual metaphors, that application of the schema is used by Schneider along with a set of understandings concerning the politics of space, of gaze, and of objects. We can see from these examples and other usage that Polanyi's choice of the term explicit to indicate a form of knowledge places it within the range of a particular set of metaphors and inferences. In each case, the explicit is that which is out there in the open, in plain sight and the light that sight requires. It is laid out before us and stands apart from us. Okay, I'm going to just leave it there. That's what I want to say on that one. But I want to come on to the tacit, beg your pardon, Polanyi's use of the word tacit in the next one, expand on that a little bit, and then I'll see if I can relate them to, relate them together into the overall metaphorical system that I'm working up to here. Thanks very much for your attention.